G'day to all my friends and family, and today I'm going to go on a bushwalk on a track called the Pemulwuy Loop. It's here at Moxham's Park at Winston Hills. I've done this loop before and it's very picturesque, lovely bushland. It's springtime, could be a few snakes about, but we'll wait and see what happens. But today I'm going to go on a walk and talk with you and go through a book summary entitled What Happened to You? And the author is Oprah Winfrey. So a lovely book in terms of discovering the impact that childhood issues and challenges, what impact they have on people, and to enjoy it whilst walking through this magnificent bushland here in suburban Sydney. Anyway, let's head off and see where it leads us. So the wind's picked up a bit, which is nice, so it'll keep it nice and cool. It's springtime, it's a little bit on the warmer side, but the breeze will keep things humming along as best and make sure that we don't get too hot along the way. This bushwalk here will take about 1.5 hours, 1 hour 40, which is quite special to sit and think that you can live in suburban Sydney and disappear into the bush for over an hour and walk in peace and quiet. Anyway, I've got some other people joining the track here, so I'll just follow them as well, and that way we don't get bogged down. There's a few people on this walk today, which is good. I'll take my time and I'll chat away as we're going. So this book here by Oprah Winfrey has quite a few lessons in it for all of us, especially for those who are parents, who are grandparents, and it can help us understand the impacts that we have on people around us, especially the younger people. We're all young once, and we know what it's like to have adults in our world, adults which make our lives easier and better. They challenge us in productive ways, but also other adults who scare the living daylights out of us and cause grief to us in those early stages of growth and development, and in some ways could even hinder our further development. So what does Oprah say here in her opening statement here? She says that we need to understand that victims of trauma are more prone to all forms of addiction because their baseline of stress is different. What a profound statement that is. Basically suggesting to us that people who have had traumatic pasts could be more inclined to substance abuse, alcohol abuse, and possibly physical and mental abuse as well, because their baseline, their life has been shaped by some experiences that they've had in their lives, and sometimes what is often quoted and said is that the abused can become the abuser. So an interesting and thoughtful start to this discussion. A real eye-opener, I guess, and a difficult topic for many. But I guess one of the benefits of Jim's 5am Club is that we do go through and talk about all the topics and go through them in detail without shying away from the realities of life. And then Oprah goes on to make an interesting observation. And the observation basically is that instead of asking what's wrong with people, what's wrong with me, we should be actually asking what happened to them or what happened to me in order to enable you or them to get a better understanding of the dynamics at play, because the way people behave, the way people react, isn't premeditated in many ways, but it could be described as being pre-programmed by the traumas and the experiences that people have faced in their lives during the critical development phases when they were growing up. So instead of asking what's wrong with them, we should be asking what actually happened to them to make them be the way they are. Interesting indeed. Very, very interesting. So the whole concept of trauma is one of the key points in Oprah's dissertation in this book. And she reminds us that trauma has a profound effect on people's adult lives. And what we're referring to here is childhood trauma, things that have happened to people, to children, in those early and very tender development stages in their lives, have stayed with them and tend to haunt people for the rest of their lives. So we go on to say that stress and or abuse, it's and or, stress and or abuse is the way that, that children's lives are impacted. But it's how we respond to these things that has a good an impact. So the first formal point to come out of this book is where the author says that our brains are uniquely shaped by the experiences that we have during childhood. As we said, from a parental perspective, from a grandparent perspective, what happens to children during their years of development impacts their futures. So Oprah talks about her own story, and it's quite sad to think about Oprah and her story, where she says that as a child she was neglected and abused, and as a teenager she was also subjected to abuse. So basically her whole life is an expression of early childhood or early teenager abuse. And she says that these experiences actually change and rewire the way the brain is. So it's not just something which is temporary, it actually has a physical impact on the structure and the wiring of the brain. And once we're wired in a particular way, then it makes sense that impacts all of our responses. It impacts the way we see the world. It impacts the way we see people. It impacts the way we respond, we react to the various stimuluses. and it helps us understand a little bit better the people around us once we understand and know their particular story. So Oprah goes on and talks about some technical things, and she says that, interestingly enough, I didn't know this, but it is quite wonderful, it is quite interesting, that a baby's brain develops at a rate of 20,000 new neurons per second. So a baby's brain is developing at a very, very rapid rate of 20,000 neurons per second. So, so as you can understand, it's a very, very significant amount of change and growth happening to a young child that, as we said, may impact and probably does impact everything in that child's life from that point onwards. So every single experience, according to the author, every single experience a child has is logged in a personal code book. It's logged in the brain, in the subconscious, in a thing called a personal code book. And it's important to be able to learn how to decipher your own code book. And it will help you understand the defense strategies, the survival mechanisms that you have come up with to keep you safe, to keep you sane, and keep you protected. So what Oprah here is telling us is that every single experience that we have in our lives is recorded, is captured in our subconscious in a thing called the personal code book. And that coding shapes the way we behave, shapes the way we respond, and basically is the lens through which we see the world through our five senses. The next point to come out of this book, as I enjoy this magnificent bushwalk, and hopefully you can be enjoying it in parallel with me, vicariously of course, but that's one of the wonderful aspects of having technology and being linked, being online, available, to be able to share the experiences so that other people can perform it and enjoy it personally themselves one day, or if they're immobile and unable, then they're able to experience it vicariously from the safety of their home. So the next point that Oprah makes in her book is that learning regulation strategies can help you heal from trauma. So what we're saying is, what has happened has happened. It's better not to have happened, but sometimes things need to happen to shape a person so that they can learn survival strategies, they can learn how to deal with these things so that they can deal with bigger and bolder issues as they get older. So it didn't stop Oprah, for example. She went on to become a very successful entrepreneur, a celebrity in many ways, and was able to then take her hurt, her pain, her suffering, and to use it to help other people build their lives and rebuild their lives without feeling as if they were the only ones, but that there are other people who had pain and suffering in their lives. So Oprah learned from a very young age to be a people pleaser. And that was her coping mechanism, according to herself. She needed to be in a position to please people in order to maintain her safety and to be able to deal with the challenges that she had in her life. So I've come here. I think I've got to go up these stairs. Let me just go up these stairs and see where it leads us. Once again, I've been on this track before, but I think I came up here before. Did I? I'm sure I did. And then we just cross over this bridge here and come down the other way. So as we were saying before, Oprah became a people pleaser from a young age, and she became very successful at gaining from the act of pleasing people. She learned that that people who have suffered trauma are trained to ignore signals. So something which is interesting. So trained to ignore signals. That is really, really interesting. An interesting point in the book here. Because what she learnt through her own experiences is that the brain has a regulation system. It's called a CRN. It's a core regulatory network. And the CRN, this regulatory system of the brain, becomes impaired by neglectful parents or neglectful caregivers. So neglecting children's needs has an impact, according to Oprah in this book, because what it does is it impacts a part of the brain which helps regulate a person's should make sure I'm going to the right place. It regulates a person's feelings, is a word that I'm looking for, and can become impaired, can become damaged through poor parenting, through bullying, through harassment, and all the other challenges that come with being with people who don't care. And what she's saying here is that what actually happens is that people who have this impairment tend to struggle with human connection and struggle with regulating themselves, and hence what it may lead to, and that point we made earlier in the book, is that it may lead to substance abuse and a irregular sort of personality where you get annoyed, you can't connect, you can't communicate. Because as we said before, the reason why those things may happen is that a part of the brain has been defective in its development, and a person can't regulate their expressions as well as what other people can regulate their expressions. So as we said before, abuse of drugs, alcohol, self-harm, eating disorders. That's why a lot of us have comfort foods. So I, for example, if I'm stressed, if I'm annoyed, if I'm angry, I'll find solace in comfort food. So I'll binge eat, for example. Other people may find solace in binge drinking, or drugs, or promiscuity, or other sorts of behaviours. So everybody has their own sort of vices or coping mechanisms, according to Oprah. But the reason why many people are unable to control themselves, regardless of how much self-regulation they try, regardless of how they try and plan the day, because the part of the brain, as we mentioned before, the CRN, is not functioning. I said it. I got it out. Is not functioning optimally. Means that they're going to have struggles in terms of being consistent in their responses, in their behaviours, because of things which are outside of their control. But the author here, Oprah, says that it's important to learn and to be able to say no when stress signals are triggered, and you need to set boundaries in your life in order to live a better life, and to not suffer the consequences of the issues that come with the abuse and trauma created from an early childhood. Then Oprah goes on to say that with the right support, people can overcome their traumatic experiences from their past lives. 50% of children basically said to have had traumatic experiences when they're growing up, and dare I say, those traumatic experiences probably escalate these days because of so many broken families, so many separated parents fighting over who's going to have the children this weekend, competing against each other, who's going to buy the best gifts, who's going to create the best experiences, who's going to go on the best holidays, and who's going to spoil their child the most. So, and things are probably going to get worse. You know, we've had the challenges of COVID-19, the isolation. A lot of people are saying that the number of calls to help centres for children have increased because children want to be with other children. Children want to be at school. Not all children, but most children. And at the moment, across Australia with lockdown, those needs of children are being denied for the right reasons. But there are going to be first, second and third level consequences that come out of this trauma that is being created in our world, excuse me, in our world at the moment. So the author here is saying, Oprah Winfrey is saying, that we need to sensitise the stress responses and help children be, I guess, empowered, productive in the way they see their problems and the way they're able to respond to them. Because if they can't regulate their emotions and their pain, then they can't focus on the way ahead, and find solutions to their problems. But children need support, they need help, they need a parent, a grandparent, somebody in their family, someone in the school, a buddy, a friend, to be able to rely on to help them get through these tough times. And they also need to understand that they are not alone. Most people, as we said before, and most people, as Oprah said, suffer the consequences, the pains of trauma. And that trauma could be real, it could be imagined, it could be inherited by your parents, your grandparents, your school teachers, your friends, because everybody, as we said, all good mate, have fears that are rational and in many ways irrational. It'd be nice to come along here with a bike too one day. So there you go. Thank you very much, Oprah Winfrey, for giving us some vision into your life and highlighting your story, and to understand that childhood trauma is very real. And as we said before, it could be imagined, it could be real, it could be imagined, but it's real. It's real for the child who's experiencing it and the child who is fighting it and can't basically deal with it or cope with it unless they have people in their lives who can work with them to get through the challenges and the pain. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I learnt a bit. Every book that I read, every book summary that I present has 1 point or 2 points that enable us to see the world differently. And I guess one of the roles that I have is to be an emissary. As I say, I'm not expressing my ideas, my opinions. All I'm doing is just reflecting on the writings of authors, OPE, other people's experiences, and using technology to bring those thoughts into our world so that we can think about it and see how it applies to each and every one of us. Anyway, we'll chat again, and I look forward to delivering another episode of Jim's 5am Club on this beautiful spring day in Moxham's Park, where we can walk and talk. And as you can see, there's been lots and lots of people on this trail. So, but it is Saturday morning, so you'd expect to have people here, and the track is well trodden, and by being well trodden, hopefully the snakes are somewhere else other than on the track as we're walking. Take care, and we'll chat again. Bye for now from Jim's 5am Club. Ciao.